Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling a really big one, the ongoing story of our changing planet, specifically the effects of global warming.
It's definitely a critical topic.
Yeah, and we've got an interesting starting point, actually. It's from an English language learning context, believe it or not.
Oh, how so?
Well, it provides this surprisingly structured overview,
Mhm.
gives us a solid framework to, pull out some key insights,
Yeah.
maybe even make connections we might overlook otherwise.
Okay, I see. Sometimes simplifying things back to basics can offer a fresh perspective.
Exactly.
Uh,
So our mission here isn't to give a beginner's lesson, but more to distill the crucial understanding what's happening, why it matters, get that focused perspective without getting totally lost in all the data.
Right, a sharp, insightful look at the core elements driving the changes we're all observing.
Okay, so let's unpack this. We'll be touching on the essentials, things like greenhouse gases,
Heat trappers, basically.
yeah,
Yeah.
and our carbon footprint, how we measure our emissions,
Mm-hmm.
climate change itself, those big long-term planetary shifts.
Right.
And importantly, renewable energy, the pathways looking towards a different future. Those are the main threads we'll follow.
And it's fascinating, isn't it, how tightly interwoven these concepts really are.
Totally.
The increase in those greenhouse gases, which is largely driven by our carbon footprint, well, that's the engine behind climate change.
Right.
And then renewable energy, that represents a fundamental shift potentially in how we power everything, which directly impacts that initial buildup of gases.
Okay, so let's start by making sure we're grounded in some of the core terms, but maybe
Right.
push a bit beyond just the dictionary definitions.
Good idea.
So greenhouse gases, we know they trap heat. The example sentence given is simple. The increase in greenhouse gases is a major cause of global warming. Pretty straightforward.
It is, but
But maybe what gets glossed over is how different gases have, like, different levels of potency and how long they stick around.
that's a crucial point, absolutely.
Well,
CO2 gets all the headlines, right? But then you have gases like methane. It doesn't last as long in the atmosphere, but while it's there, its warming potential is much higher.
Okay. So understanding those nuances is key for figuring out where to focus mitigation efforts.
Precisely.
Then there's carbon footprint,
Mm-hmm.
defined as, well, the emissions from human activities. The example. We should try to reduce our carbon footprint by using public transportation. Simple action.
Seems simple, yeah.
But when you think about the sheer scale global transportation, all our individual choices, the cumulative impact is huge.
Hmm.
What are some maybe less obvious things that add to our footprint, things people might overlook?
That's a good question. Often it's sort of embedded in our consumption habits.
Like what?
Well, the energy used in manufacturing things, transporting them all over the world, and then what happens when we dispose of them.
Right, the whole life cycle.
Exactly. And food production, too, especially meat consumption that has a really substantial footprint that isn't always immediately obvious. It's about looking beyond just, flipping a light switch.
Okay, interesting. Next up, climate change. Those long-term shifts, temperature, weather, sea levels, example. Climate change is causing more frequent extreme weather events. We're definitely seeing that, aren't we?
We are. It feels like every season brings new records.
So what kind of data really shows the long-term part of it? How do we know it's not just like a weird couple years?
That's where paleoclimate records come in. Things like ice core analysis.
From Antarctica and Greenland.
Exactly. That data goes back hundreds of thousands of years. It gives us a baseline of natural climate cycles. And when you compare today's rate of change to those natural cycles, well, it's unprecedented.
So that long-term view really highlights the human fingerprint on what's happening now.
It really does.
Okay, finally, renewable energy. Sources that are naturally replenished help reduce global warming. The example. Switching to renewable energy sources can help combat climate change. Huge potential there, obviously.
It's potential, yes.
But what are the current sort of hurdles or challenges
Mm.
in making a full-scale global switch? It's not flicking a switch, is it?
No, definitely not. Intermittency is a big one.
Meeting.
Well, solar power needs sun, wind power needs wind. They aren't available 247, so that requires big advancements in energy storage batteries, basically, and much smarter grid management.
Okay.
And also, we need to think about the sourcing of materials for solar panels, wind turbines, batteries, and the manufacturing processes themselves. They have their own environmental footprint that needs careful management and optimization.
Right. No, it's perfectly clean.
Yeah.
Okay, so with that slightly deeper dive into the terms, let's look at how our source material talks about the effects getting worse. The dialogue notes, the effects seem to be getting worse. Simple statement, but What specific trends are really alarming researchers right now?
I'd say the accelerating rate of ice melt is particularly concerning, both in the polar regions, Arctic and Antarctic, but also mountain glaciers worldwide.
Why is that so concerning?
Because it directly contributes to sea level rise, obviously, but it also disrupts ocean currents, which has knock-on effects for weather, and we're seeing more compound extreme events,
Compound events like what?
like a severe heat wave followed immediately by a drought. That combination dramatically increases wildfire risk and really hammers agriculture.
Yeah, makes sense. The source specifically mentions the melting of polar ice caps leading to rising sea levels, potential flooding in coastal cities.
Yeah.
That's the most direct impact, I guess.
It's the most visible, perhaps. But beyond just the flooding, there are other major knock-on effects.
Such as.
While I mentioned the disruption of ocean currents, changes in water temperature and salinity from all that freshwater melt can really alter global weather patterns in complex ways. And there's also a feedback loop. Ice is white, it reflects sunlight back into space. Less ice means the darker ocean or land absorbs more heat, which leads to, well, more warming.
A dangerous cycle.
Exactly. A feedback loop we really don't want to accelerate.
The source also links global warming to more wildfires, hotter temperatures, droughts making things tinder dry. Are some places getting hit harder than others?
Definitely. We see it acutely in Mediterranean climates, places like California, parts of Australia, Southern Europe. They have naturally dry summers, so they're very vulnerable.
Right.
But what's also concerning is we're seeing huge, unprecedented wildfires in places like the boreal forests in Canada, Siberia. These are ecosystems that historically haven't burned with such intensity. That signals a really significant shift.
And then there's the impact on ecosystems, habitats changing, species struggling. The source mentions habitat loss. Can you give some examples of species really feeling the heat, so to speak?
Well, the polar bear is the classic example, isn't it? Their sea ice hunting platforms are literally melting away.
Right, the poster child.
Yeah. But it's far beyond just them. Think about coral reefs bleaching due to warmer oceans. Think about specialized insects or amphibians that can only tolerate a very narrow temperature range. Many species are facing severe threats, even extinction, as their homes just become unsuitable.
It's pretty sobering stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, on a slightly more positive note, the dialogue does mention actions, using renewable energy, reducing waste, planting trees, ways to lessen our impact. It emphasizes collective action. Are there good examples of that working, large-scale stuff?
Absolutely. Look at the incredible growth of solar and wind power in many countries over the last decade or two. That didn't happen by accident. It was driven by government incentives, technological breakthroughs, and collective investment.
Okay.
And international agreements, like the Paris Agreement, for all their challenges and complexities, they do set frameworks. They encourage countries to set emissions targets and push innovation in clean tech. So collective action, both national and international, can make a difference.
Okay, good to hear. Now let's shift a bit and look at some of the language used. The phrase, the effects seem to be getting worse. It's simple, but it carries weight.
It does. The word worse clearly implies that negative momentum, doesn't it? An observable increase in severity or frequency. It's a concise way to say this problem is growing.
Yeah. And the melting of polar ice caps linked to rising sea levels, that's a very clear cause and effect.
It is, and it's a visually powerful image, too. It makes the abstract idea of sea level rise much more tangible, more concerning for people.
Right. And what about reduce our impact on the planet? It's broad, but important.
Very important. It emphasizes our agency, Impact clearly states our actions have consequences, good or bad, and reduce suggests we actually have the power to lessen the negative ones.
Makes sense. Our source also includes other useful phrases, like, we need to take action to combat climate change. That word combat, it sounds pretty serious.
Yeah. It does. Combat implies a real struggle, doesn't it? It suggests this isn't a minor issue we can just tweak around the edges. It requires a strategic, persistent effort. Underscores the scale of the challenge.
Okay, NJ. And greenhouse gases are contributing to the rise in global temperatures. Explains the mechanism clearly. Contributing seems like an important word there.
It is. It establishes that causal link these gases are causing warming, but it doesn't necessarily claim they're the only factor, which reflects the complexity of the whole climate system.
Right. How about we should reduce our carbon footprint by using less energy? That feels very practical.
Yeah, it connects that abstract idea of a carbon footprint directly to everyday behavior energy use. Makes it relatable, something individuals feel they can actually do something about.
And this one. The planet is facing serious challenges because of global warming. Underscores the gravity.
Serious challenges. That phrasing moves it beyond just minor inconveniences, right? It highlights the potential for really significant widespread disruption, systemic damage even.
Yeah. Okay. Renewable energy sources like solar power can help reduce global warming, offers a solution. Naming solar makes it concrete.
Exactly. Giving specific examples like solar or wind makes the whole idea of renewable energy less abstract, more accessible. It illustrates practical alternatives we can move towards.
And more frequent extreme weather events are a direct result of climate change. That feels like a strong statement. Direct result.
It strengthens that causal link significantly. It's moving beyond just saying things are correlated to implying a strong, demonstrable connection between the changing climate and these intense events, heat waves, floods, storms.
Got it. And lastly, deforestation is contributing to the problem. A reminder about forests.
Yeah, contributing, again, highlighting it as a significant factor. It emphasizes how interconnected Earth's systems are. Removing forests, which act as natural carbon sinks, just makes the problem of too much CO2 in the atmosphere worse.
So pulling this all together, the core message really seems to be, yes, the planet faces these serious challenges from global warming. That's clear.
Undeniably.
But the key takeaway also seems to be that actions, both what we do as individuals and what we push for collectively, really are crucial. Being mindful of consumption, supporting renewables, policy changes, they can make a meaningful difference.
Precisely. It's about recognizing the urgency, yes, but also embracing the agency we all have to shape a more sustainable path forward. It's not hopeless.
Okay, so wrapping up our deep dive into the effects of global warming. We've tried to move beyond just the basic terms like greenhouse gases and carbon footprint, looking at their deeper implications. We've examined how these worsening effects are showing up: rising temperatures, extreme weather, the critical issue of melting ice, and the impacts on ecosystems and species.
And importantly, we've touched on the positive actions, the potential of renewable energy, and the power of collective effort.
Right. And hopefully, as you, our listener, consider all this, you feel a bit more empowered by understanding these complexities. Empowered to engage more effectively, maybe find solutions in your own life or in the bigger picture.
That's the hope. Understanding is the first step towards meaningful action.
So for our final thoughts today, maybe just consider that interconnectedness we talked about, how the choices we make, energy, food, consumption, they all ripple outwards. They contribute to the larger picture. Perhaps this discussion sparked an idea about one specific area. Maybe it's looking into energy efficiency at home or supporting more sustainable agriculture or something else entirely that you might want to explore further.
Small changes collectively can add up.
Indeed. Thanks for exploring this critical issue with us today on The Deep Dive.